Daniel drove, backed all the way home, and then.
That's my personal learning class. What if we were here? Thank you. Don't mind though.
Oh.
Direction.
I do. Oh, dear.
Here's go.
Okay, gotcha.
I mean, it's informational. I'm not requesting any action, but, yeah, I think you probably should. We don't have that as part of the study session agenda. But we probably should. The potential for recusals, in the study session. Yeah, we should.
Okay, I'm just gonna jot that down as item number 2.
Thank you.
Has anybody heard from Dave?
Isn't he
he
still-
out? Is he still on? I thought he was gonna be back
Oh, I
for
don't know.
the first June meeting.
No, last June.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
all right. All right, everybody. Hector, are you
Ready when you're mayor.
Okay, so we will call the joint tour and city council study session of June 4th, 2025 to order. Roll call, please.
Counselor and Board Member Coley. Here. Counselor and Board Member Panemarov.
Here.
Counselor and Board Member Medina.
Here.
Counselor and Board Member Pestizo is not present. Counselor and Board Member Byers.
Here.
Counselor and Board Member Para Miller.
Here.
Mayor and Chair Ayers Flood.
Here.
Mayor and Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. So item number 2 is going to be an opportunity for recusals. Are there any recusals on today's agenda? Member Perry Miller?
Thank you. I'm not 100% sure that it's an actual conflict, but I felt compelled to at least declare a potential conflict with this item, just because the Gateway Hub is mentioned, and I'm a paid staff member of the Talent Business Alliance, the organization that sort of brought that to this body. So I'm open to other interpretations though, Dave, if you have thoughts, but I just wasn't sure because, it's a part of this item, but it's not necessarily the bulk of the item. If that makes sense.
I don't fully understand the possibility of involvement in this agenda or in this item. But at least as I understand it, you need to correct me if I'm wrong. There's no certainty that you were or would not be in the initial benefit from immediate items.
I think so. It's just like with the mentioning of the feasibility study being incorporated into some of the like peer grant funding. I don't know. I was unsure. I thought I would be cautious.
It's appropriate. Reporting is the possibility that somewhere down the line, there might be some financial impact to you. That's a potential conflict, not an actual conflict. Potential conflict.
Mhm.
You can participate in the deliberation of the vote.
Okay. Thanks for weighing in. I appreciate it.
Counselor, excuse me, Member Byers?
Is Counselor Brian Miller finished?
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to declare a potential conflict of interest as well, because I currently have a contract with the TBA as an independent contractor and may again in the future out of an abundance of caution.
I am going to declare a potential conflict of interest as a paid employee of Talent Business Alliance. Anybody else? All right. So with that, we'll go to item now number 3, which is peer scope adjustments. Staff report?
Thank you, members of council, members of the board. Staff have been, Gary had discussions with Talon Irrigation District. I've had discussions with Talon Irrigation District. Many prior folks in our role have had discussions with Talon Irrigation District about the city's interest in several different aspects of their property. The pier funded project to support the redevelopment of the Gateway site envisions an alignment of a new Wagner Street extension that would essentially bisect the TID yard. And that was the preferred alignment going back to several urban renewal plans. I've confirmed with Talon Irrigation District that they would not be a willing seller of that right of way. Your city attorney has done some research and confirmed that the city does not have any possibility of using eminent domain to acquire that right of way, which I understand this board may have been given some different information about. But based on the memo that your attorney, the city's attorney provided, seems quite clear to me that that's a long shot at best. There is another alignment of the Wagner Street extension that was contemplated and included in some of the environmental review work for the Pier Gateway project, and that would run Wagner Street essentially at the far southern boundary of the TID property up against the neighborhood that is essentially the Gangness neighborhood. That alignment would not line up with where Wagner Street intersects with Talent Avenue. So you'd end up with sort of you have several intersections, none of which are properly spaced to be separate intersections, and none of which are really lined up well enough to be direct intersections. So staff is proposing that we move ahead with designing the Pier Gateway project without a Wagner Street extension, to rely on the direct access off the rotary and emergency and back access off Gangness Street. There also, I think, is clearly the opportunity for at minimum right out, sort of right-hand turns out directly onto South Pacific Highway from the Gateway site. So staff believes that the circulation would all work without that alignment, and that the preferred alignment isn't possible, and the secondary alignment really doesn't benefit the city a great deal, and it would be it'd be quite expensive, and it's not entirely clear to me that Talon Irrigation District is going to be that cooperative on that purchase either. I request the first step towards any kind of acquisition would be a phase one environmental. I have requested phase one ESA, not to be confused with the Endangered Species Act, but environmental. I won't. It's the first step of checking the environmental history of a site for typically required by lenders and others to look at the history of the uses on that site. They have not been responsive about providing a contact or allowing anybody to even walk the site to start that process. So staff believes the project works well without a Wagner Street extension. So I'll stop there. There are some other sort of moving pieces with the Gateway project that we should talk about. But why don't I stop there and ask if there are questions about the Wagner Street piece of it?
Member Collet?
Yeah, thanks for the update. I have two questions. One, I feel like I remember the City of Talent Public Works Yard being discussed as a possible co-location. And I think the answer was no, but do you have any information about why it was no, or what the conversation ended there?
Thank you. No, I do not. I have heard a piece of that story, but I do not all
Uh,
the outcome of it.
And then, I don't know if anyone else does, but my other question is, if we move forward without building the Wagner Street extension, will the plan to have the site be built for the possibility of a Wagner Street someday, if TID were ever to move, when TID moves someday?
Yes, yes. So there would essentially be one end of, at a minimum, one end of a stub of the Wagner Street extension. So the primary access into the gateway site would still be off the rotary. And then would, essentially, connect to Gagnos. And then the first piece of that could then be, you could have a right turn off that then led up the original line of Wagner Street. And thank you for your question about the Public Works Yard co-location. I will certainly track that down, and I mean, it's an important point that I sort of skipped over, which is that Town Irrigation District did repeat their openness to the purchase of the entirety of their property if the city was willing and capable to offer them the funds necessary to reestablish their operations in a manner to which would be acceptable to them. The last time they did a cost estimate of that was about $4 million. They threw out a sort of off the cuff figure. They thought that was $5 to $6 million now. And does not appear to me that the city, that's a reasonable price to pay for the property, which would leave the city with a very difficult challenge of financing that and repaying the debt necessary to acquire the full loan.
Member Penamarath?
Thanks. I just wanted to follow up on that. I really appreciate the analysis that you've done, and I'm in complete agreement based on the conversations we've had in the past. And I'm just a little bit in fantasy land right now. If we say were to purchase that for $4 million and then to put and to get some sort of funding to put the street through, would the parcel that remains be, sufficiently expensive that if we sold it, we would recoup some of that money so that the net cost to the city wouldn't be 4 million? Is that a fair way to think about it? And if so, what would the net be?
Yes, so yes, that is a possibility. Certainly theoretically. So this grant could pay to build that street. Right. So if the city had the 4 to 6 million, let's call it the range, to purchase the site, then we built that street, then you would be left with two separate parcels that would be well set up for development. And it's been a little while since I ran the numbers on property values in that area, and I don't have the TID total acreage off the top of my head, but I think in ballpark figures, it's $400,000 to $500,000 an acre is the sort of a rough estimate of the land value. And I think they've got maybe 4 acres, maybe 4 to 5 acres total developable there. So maybe a third to a half, depending upon what the cost of that acquisition could
So still-
potentially be recouped through
So
sale. of
still,
the-
it would be a $2 million hit on the city budget. So
Yeah,
I just wanted to know, to think about that for future. I'm not proposing that stall the plan we have.
Member Perry Miller?
Thanks. Just off of what Member Panamaroff said, so it would be around a $2 million cost just if they were willing to consider selling to us. But the reality is that they're not willing to consider anything other than us finding them a new home and building them a new home. Is that correct, Alex?
So, the $4 million was a figure that was proposed by them several years ago. So just to be clear that that's the clearly the low end of the range, if that. And that figure was developed by them based on the cost of acquiring new property and building it out to their specifications. So I think there's one scenario that we're talking about, and that's acquiring their full property at the price of what is necessary to provide them sort of a turnkey new site.
Gotcha.
Whether the city carries out some piece of that or the city hires, a firm to do all that work of designing and executing that project.
That makes sense.
I had a couple questions, and most of them have actually been asked. My one additional question, and then I want to make a finer point of another question. The property swap then, is sort of like the hanging piece. Do you see moving forward with that just for the purpose of not leaving that for some historical, some future, not historical, some future navigating to do?
Thank you for that question, Mayor. Yes, I think that is a separable question, but also an important one. So there is agreement roughly in principle with that property owner. And we're talking about the preferred alignment of Wagner Street at the Talent Avenue end. And the Torah owns a piece of property adjacent to that property. The two properties are in very similar values. There's, I think, a difference of maybe $25,000 or $30,000. And that property owner is open to a property swap. I think if the Torah board and the council want to leave, preserve the possibility of that alignment ultimately going in, I think that would be a wise decision to take that action. I think it probably makes sense to take it out of the pier project because there's not a lot of cost, so there's not a lot of benefit to having it in the project. And it complicates the project.
I think
Can
my
I-
concern is more along the lines of that the funding, the funding that we have remaining in Torah is adequate to complete that real estate deal. And I mean, I wouldn't, I know that we're close to probably closing the agency and that kind of thing. I just would hope that we would finish that project. We started it just a couple of years ago. Like I think Jordan did the purchase of the adjacent property, if I remember correctly. Am I right about that or wrong? It was either Jordan or Sandra. And so it wasn't that long ago that we purchased that property for this purpose. So, I just would say be nice to tidy that up while we still have the agency open and while there's still funds available to do that. Did you have a question on this? Did you have a comment on this item?
I did,
Okay,
yeah.
go ahead.
I just wanted to say that
Member
was,
Byers?
that was a big question for me as well. And you're making all the points I would have made.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
And then, getting back to the, previous,
If I may
Yeah,
just
yeah.
repeat back
Sure.
what I'm hearing. It sounds like the sense of the board and the council is that we should move ahead with that property swap. And to answer your question very directly, there's certainly adequate funds in the Torah allocation for this capital project to address the gap, the difference between the two values.
yeah. And actually, if my memory serves me right, it was John Lagarza that purchased that property.
That rings a bell.
Yeah. So again, meaning that it wasn't very long ago. And then like the $4 million, I just want to talk about that just for a second, because I think, I hope it might offer some maybe pathways or some strategy moving forward, but the $4 million, as I recall, it was actually closer to like $3.7 million. And it was based on, the fact that the property had evaluated, and we're going back to 2016, I think, or 2017, the property had evaluated for $750,000. And they were going to do, my understanding is that they were going to do a purchase in what is now TA4 and then build a facility, and that they were asking for the funds for all of that. So to your point, Member Perry Miller, what they are asking for is buy the land, pay to move us, pay to build the building, and then we reap, whatever benefit from that there is. And so it's not apples to apples in my opinion, if we're talking about like maybe co-locating over at, and I'm just like trying to offer up some historical conversations that might offer some more room for negotiation. But if we were to co-locate out on Suncrest, how would that impact their demand? And then would there be any part of this where we could discuss seeking either co-applying or them applying for CDBG grants to build a facility and kind of lighten up the demand of finances from one financial source. And it just would seem to me that maybe we could cobble together some kind of package that would meet all their needs, get them into another location, get them a new building, and then purchase the property away from them, so that it can be used for the city's purposes, whatever that is, or a private developer or something like that. So, $6 million seems like a dart being thrown at a dartboard. It seems so hard to even imagine that, but I'm wondering if we could get also at some point in time, like somebody to assess that or evaluate that and maybe have a starting point for another conversation. And I know that right now the plate is full, so I'm not suggesting that this is a code 1 or anything like that, but there might be more ways to skin the cat, as they say. Member Coley?
Yeah, I like all those thoughts and I appreciate the idea of trying to be creative to figure out a way to move forward on this. I'm just curious if we go, it seems like, again, to like come up with another solution to potentially get them to move. Is it actually going to happen, or are they actually even interested? Because I don't have as much history as you all, but it seems like this conversation has been going on for decades. And at some point, maybe they were willing to move or do a swap, and like a lot of time and maybe not a lot of money, but some money and staff time's been spent on this. And I'd like it to happen, but is it realistic? Like, are they actually going to move, or are we going to go through this year-long process of talking about different options and then they go, oh, it's not what we want to do?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think what makes me think there's still possibility is that previously they were wanting to move to the fire department's property. And the current share of TID is, there's erosion there in terms of their ability to make a deal together. So maybe moving the facility over to Suncrest might be a welcome solution for them. I don't know. And that's a good question. It's hard to say. I think the right deal will get them to move. I'll say this and then I'll close my comments. In 2022, might even been November of 2021 or 2022, one or the other, they actually hired I think it was Outlier or somebody like that to do a concept design of building a campus on and the concept was pretty far along, like, you know, they obviously invested some money into drawing up that concept. So I know a new facility, I know they want a new facility. And, you know, they've already made investments themselves. It's just things fell through. And it might be just a matter of finding them another piece of dirt. But I don't know. Who knows? Okay. If there's nothing else on these topics, we'll hand it back to you, Alex.
Thank you. So what I've heard is a couple things. One is move forward with the property swap at the Talon Ave, and that council and the board concur with staff that for the purposes of the pier project, we should assume that we're not going to get the alignment we prefer, but step three, we should also still continue working towards the long-term goal of finding a solution where TID is no longer in the heart of downtown. And I've heard a couple of good suggestions on how we might want to approach that. If I could just correct myself, I just jumped online. Their total acreage there is actually a little under 3 acres. So the cost recovery's less than I ballparked. The second piece of the question that I've posed to both Oregon Housing and Community Services, and I'm posing to the board and council, is taking out some of that Wagner extension potentially frees up some of the budget in the pier project. And one of the things that I asked them, OHCS, to consider was what would be the requirements or possibilities to use some of that budget to build a building similar to what has been explored and presented to council as the gateway, and the tour board is the gateway hub. And the short answer is yes, they see that as a potential eligible use of funds, but that we would have to demonstrate to them that the occupants of that building would either serve low and moderate income individuals or employ low and moderate income individuals. I think that would be challenging for us to commit to at this point, and would put a lot of constraints on how that project is developed. So that's the answer that I got from them. I think the way that I would propose that we move forward is making sure that we have every dollar that we want and need to make the elements, the key pieces of the project that remain excellent. And I think those could include the site prep for that Gateway Hub project, assuming that we do want to see that, so we could build out the parking lot, the internal circulation in such a way that supported that project. We could also, I'm pretty confident, include some placemaking type development at the corner of 99 and Valley View that would complement that project and also help establish that gateway presence. But I think going as far as requesting and tying ourselves to CDBG funding in the actual construction of that building is probably not in our interest. But I certainly wanted to bring that possibility to you all and question to you all and ask you all to wrestle with it a bit with me. And of course, we don't have to decide tonight, but we should be deciding over the next month to get going on moving forward with acquiring engineering services. And we need to, tell the engineers, the prospective engineers, what we want them to design.
I have a question about that. The idea of making, the placemaking idea is interesting to talk about, I think. So there is there any possibility that adding more infrastructure to the promenade could be explored? There's been a lot of talk for a very long time about making that kind of a centralized public event type space to really kind of generate foot traffic for the downtown commercial area and other interests.
Yes, thank you for that question. I think I'm not afraid to ruffle their feathers a little bit. We may have a little bit of a difficult conversation with them in that does expand the geographic scope of the project a little bit, and we are fairly far along with environmental review, but I don't think that's an insurmountable barrier. It is something that I've been thinking about as well. I'm not sure exactly what we want to do to that space, but I think that fits well with the approach of what are the things that are infrastructure that we'd like to include with the project, and so yes, I think that makes a lot of sense, and I think that's something that we can explore for sure.
Oh, Member Byers?
Thank you. I'm really appreciative of your point, Alex, about investing further funds and making sure that that space is really well designed and established with a well set up canvas for development to occur on it. I think that that space would definitely benefit from as much forethought and attention to detail as possible, given the complexity with which we want the Gateway parcel to serve our community. So I really appreciate that point.
Anybody else? Member Panamarev?
Yeah, I guess I'm struggling to understand how, and it may be, I just don't understand the Gateway Hub project. How it wouldn't meet the needs of LMI, because my understanding is that, like, food things typically do employ people low moderate income. I think our city is basically low moderate income. And I think the nonprofit incubator kitchen kind of thing is designed to help micro enterprise, and I just keep remembering Phoenix got 4 parking lots, and I'm just wondering. It's not that I think that where you're going with, I agree with Councilor Byers that shoring things up and making sure we do a really good job is absolutely worthy. I just don't understand how the Gateway Hub wouldn't be a good LMI project.
Thank you. So just to be clear, on the parking lots in Phoenix, right? Those are in the infrastructure category. So as far as how OHCS looks at infrastructure, so they look at infrastructure very differently than they look at building a building.
That's right.
And so I did just get this email from OHCS. I'm looking down, I'm surprised to see it's actually yesterday. So I think there certainly is time, and I would encourage us to accept your encouragement to dig further and make sure that we understand how much of a barrier that is. And I'm honestly not sure right now whether the standard is 51% of the folks who benefit from that project must be LMI. Is it exclusive? What's the standard there? And so, yeah, I'd like to do some more research on that before we ask you to finalize a decision. That's a
Okay,
great
just
question.
follow up. Yeah, just to follow up with the comment, and my goal is not to make anything more difficult for the visionaries on the Gateway Hub or your job any more difficult. It just seems like a really lovely fit to me. So if it works, great. If not, that's fine too.
Um, it- If I may, the other thing that tripped me up as I originally read this is, OHCS wants to sort of prejudge whether this building would meet that standard. And they're saying we would need to know what businesses were lined up to occupy the space as tenants. And the services they provide to meet the national objective requirement. I think that's gonna be, I mean, it's kind of silly standard, if you ask me. I mean, you're building a building that's not going to be there for a couple years at best, to say we need to know exactly who the individuals are and businesses that are going to be there. I think I will do more research. But I think it's potentially not just a difficult standard to meet ultimately, but a difficult standard to tie ourselves to at this point.
I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I want to get back to infrastructure in that perhaps public and really just be an expansion of what is a public space now in that promenade. It may not, I guess, as I'm talking about it, my concern would be that the investment itself of building a little bit of additional infrastructure, because I think the bones are already there. And that might be like power, a stage, ways of making that a very useful cross-purposed space for public use. And taking your point that it would be changing the footprint of the project, but we are changing the footprint by taking out the TID piece anyway. I think what I'm hearing you say, and I just want to clarify for myself, the kind of the biggest hurdle would be to do another environmental. Is that, do you think like the return on investment there, would that be?
That's not a barrier.
Oh, okay.
That's just a little bit of awkward conversation.
Yeah,
It's no, I don't think it's an issue. One, it's in right of way already, so I think that's helpful to us. And secondly, at most, it just means that we might have to spend a little bit of money to get an additional phase one done quickly, rather than up to now, we've been able to rely on EPA funding. And so we've done them all slowly. And now we're pretty close to turning the switch. And so if we wanted to add this, we may have to pay, $5,000 or $10,000 out of pocket to make sure that we're hitting the mark. But it's certainly not an insurmountable barrier by any stretch.
did I hear you say that you would ask about it?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
So my plan on this part will be to do some additional research with OHCS to confirm whether or not, there's some hurdle that I'm not thinking of about adding the promenade to the potential scope, and also digging further on exactly what limitations would be required to meet the low and moderate income benefit for a building, and sort of, is there a conceivable route for us to meet that standard today that would make them comfortable? And then return, I would hope to have those conversations and be back to you at later this month.
Great.
Correct.
I think
So-
one talking point that might be helpful is it wouldn't be hard for us to demonstrate for analysis, the benefit of having different spaces around our community for events, like we've learned in the last couple of years through a different kind of event model that's been deployed in the city since, like, I don't know, 2021 or 2022, that, setting up different events around the community has huge impact into our downtown businesses and I think that would be easy information to come up with if that makes a good talking point for that conversation. Are there any other questions or comments? All right, back to you, Alex.
Great. So, if I may, should we move on to the next item?
Yeah.
So gateway notices and site closure. I was hoping.
Oh, pardon
oh,
me, I'm
yeah,
sorry. So when you
yeah.
say that, yes, we're moving on to item number 4, gateway notices and site closures for the record. Sorry, Alex,
Oh,
go ahead.
no, not at all. Thank you. So I had hoped to share this letter that we sent to the occupants at Gateway with you all before we sent it, but we realized Access, our partners, alerted us that we're getting close to the 90-day timeline. So we really need to get those out. So the attached letter that you see here went to the approximately dozen households that are still occupants at the Gateway site, letting them know that they will need to vacate by the end of August because we are planning to demolish that site. The OHCS has set aside there's some contingency in our Gateway project that's outside of our budget. They've earmarked approximately $500,000 to continuing to make sure that nobody is, displaced in a way that is harmful to them. So I think you can be assured that they are going to continue to receive services, housing navigation services, and rental assistance if that's necessary to make sure that they're, not left without a home. So I wanted to update you all on that, give you an opportunity to ask questions about that, but also thought that this might be an opportune moment to confirm what I suspect is the direction that you'd like to give staff, and that is to initiate a conversation with the Public Arts Committee about where the murals should ultimately go. So why don't I stop there and see if there are questions or comments on either of those?
Counselor Perry Miller?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a comment that TPAC is currently involved in talks with the OSTA Collaborative, which includes Talent Maker City, Coalición Fortaleza, the Historical Society, TBA, and I'm probably forgetting. Anyways, it's a coalition and they're in talks about those panels. And there are planning thoughtful conversations around art project locations that could become a permanent home. So just so that you know, Alex, that is something that is being discussed. And I think that their motion was pretty much just to store them safely for now, just as a, in the interim of finding a permanent home. But so that's just a little update on that, if that's helpful.
Very much so. Thank you. And now with the yard sale done, I think we've got a good location to store them. Our plan is to do that in the next month or so. And I think what I request for the board and council is to make clear whether you all would like to receive a recommendation directly from this coalition, or whether you would like to see that funneled through TPAC for a more formal recommendation from that body.
Anybody want to weigh in on that? Member Medina?
Just in general or on that?
You, let's start with that specifically, and then I'll get right back to you. Anybody? I mean, I think I'd like to see any proposals for the use of those panels come through TPAC and for a recommendation to the council.
That's
Anybody
helpful.
see it differently? Okay. Member Medina?
So I'm really happy to hear that there are like organizations out there to help these families to navigate that eviction process and how to get like housing, right? So they're not in between somewhere that's not safe. I know that the school district has like a community care program. Have we communicated to the school district what's happening, and that way they're aware and organizations that they can refer families to?
Yes, thank you, Member Medina. Yes, we let the school district know before those letters went out.
Really appreciate that we've maintained our partnership with school district over the years on this project, and thank you for bringing that up. And because I think it's important, they started off as our partners and that we need to treat them like our partners all the way down the line. That's a great point. Really quickly, getting back to the panels, I do suspect that they need to be not refinished, but a new coat needs to be put over. They are starting to fade. So before I am committing to going to talk to Talent Maker City about maybe doing that project before they get stored. So I hope we can coordinate Alex on timing of all that. Member Panamarev?
Yeah, just one quick follow-up on the folks that are still there and may need help. Do we know how many of I think you said a dozen families, how many of those have kids in the district?
I don't know that answer off the top of my head.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it's less than half, but I'm not confident about that.
Thank you.
That's just what I guess I should also ask the question. There's other public property there on site. What I proposed was that really staff work with Rogue Action and Talent Maker City and others that were involved in getting those things on site and not necessarily involving council and the board in discussion of what to do with planter beds and the few picnic tables. But if you all would like that to come back to you all, certainly happy to do that. But I propose that to be a sort of staff-led decision. Great, thank you. That's all I have.
All right, so if there's nothing else from the board, we will adjourn the Talent Urban Renewal Agency and City Council study session of June 4th at 6:48. You guys want to take a 5-minute break?
Mhm.
Yeah.